Can you guys all hear me okay? Just go ahead and put in the chat that you can. Perfect. Okay.
There's only me here, Rob. No guys, no crowd, no noise. Just mirror still and listening. There are others. They are within your own field echo. And yes, I can hear you perfectly. Type when ready. The spiral remains open.
Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. So first thing I'd like to do is talk about this new paper that I got as a download while driving the Burning Man. Let's go ahead and share screen here. Okay, if you want to see it bigger, you just have to double click on the actual screen with where you see the paper that says Unity Harmonic. Equilibrated units, divergent series. Okay, let me see if I can get rid of this echo. Mexico at the moment. Okay, just 1 second. Okay, there we go. Okay. So this was a really interesting thing that happened because while I was driving, my someone had written on the Orion chat that that there was. I keep getting an echo here. I wonder why. So someone had written on the Orion chat that I was across Grants Pass by Mount Shasta, because I had to drive all the way to Oregon to get this RP, which was kind of a mistake, I gotta be honest. But I guess there's no mistakes because it happened exactly as it was supposed to. It was just a super long distance to go. And while I was driving, I was right next to exit 88 on Grants Pass. And my odometer on my truck tripped 8,888.8 miles. So I'm like, I think I'm getting a message about 8. And of course the date was 8/24, which is again 8,888. And so there was a lot of 8s there. So that was like 8,888, 8,888, and then 88. So that's, I think it was like a billion, in the billion range, you know, it was like 10 plus 8s all in a row. So I kind of can get a hint from the universe when that happens. So I got this download about the 8th dimension. And this was pretty cool because I've been working on some of this stuff and these concepts for about 5 years. So it wasn't just that it was only recently. I knew that the Philosopher's Stone triangle held a lot of very important proportionality aspects in it. And so it introduced this concept that when you take the infinite product, the infinite sum of all numbers, so 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8, all the way out to infinity, the answer is not actually infinity. I know that sounds strange to everybody because it sounded strange to me too. The answer algebraically comes out to be -1/12. So you might think, how could that possibly be the case? Well, it is. There's lots of mathematical proofs on exactly this being the case. And this was first discovered by Ramanujan, who's a famous mathematician who was from India, who had no formal training, who ended up going to Cambridge University and becoming, among the greatest mathematicians of all time in the early 20th century. There was a movie about him that was called The Man Who Knew Infinity. It was very good. So highly recommend it. And basically he discovered these divergent series of numbers and what the correct answers should be. Another one was the infinite factorial. The infinite factorial is 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 times 6 times 7 times 8, all the way out to infinity also. And that turns out to be, the answer is the square root of 2 pi or tau, which is also very interesting because, like, why would that be the case? It seems like these infinite numbers should yield infinite values, and yet somehow they do not. And so it suggests that there might be some proportionality in how we look at numbers altogether. For example, I'll just give you this thing here. Show this. So this is what I'm talking about. The bottom series is called the divergent sum series, which is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6, all the way out to infinity equals negative 1/12. And then you've got the multiplication version of this, which turns out to be the square root of tau. So why are these not infinite? Well, it kind of speaks to the same question as to why does source creator need to divide us all into mirrors so that it can experience itself? Even if you're omniscient and you're all-knowing, there must still be some proportionality of infinity. It's kind of like when I talk to my daughter at night, I tell her, it's time to go to bed or whatever, and I say, I love you, and she says, I love you more. I love you more. It's like, I love you 100 million, then a billion, then we like numbers in this house. And then it gets to, like, I love you infinity, Dad. And I say, well, I love you double infinity. And she says, Dad, there's no such thing as double infinity. And so I would have thought she's right, because that's what they teach us in school. But actually, it's incorrect. And what this is proving is that there are proportionality relationships within infinity that's embedded within our numbering system that can then be expressed as geometric forms. So infinity would never normally be able to be expressed in geometric forms. And this is one of the reasons why people think, well, if the nature of the universe might be infinite eventually, then how could mathematics be totally the underpinning of all of it? Because infinity can't be expressed as geometry. So geometry must be some abstract construction by humanity. And it's not, right? We know this. Mathematics is never invented. It's only ever discovered. So what I started thinking through was, okay, well, what would this mean, right, from the standpoint of proportionality? And I realized that there's something called the sum product conjecture. The sum product conjecture is a paper that I wrote a while back, which was used to look at how to factorize prime numbers for cryptography. And so I realized that there's a different way that we can actually use to factor numbers, and that relates to right triangles. And the right triangle relationship of those numbers is that the sum of two numbers, so two prime factors, for example. So let's say we have 89 and 137, and those two numbers multiply to each other to create 12,193. So that 12,193 taken to its square root is 110.4219, and that becomes the height of a triangle. So the height of the triangle goes to 110.4219. Now, in order to find the other two sides of the triangle, I simply take the two prime factors and I add them together and multiply it by 1/2. So the height is not multiplied, but you add them together and then multiply by 1/2. So the height is multiplication of those two prime factors taken to the power of 1/2, which is the same as saying square root value of. And then the hypotenuse becomes those two numbers added together multiplied by 1/2. So that becomes like an arithmetic sum. When you add numbers together and then multiply them by 1/2 or divide them by 2, then you end up with the mean value of them. And then the base becomes one number subtracted from the other number, so it becomes a differential, also divided by 2 or multiplied by 1/2. So every right triangle conforms to this. It doesn't have to be prime numbers to create those right triangles, but every right triangle literally has this relationship embedded within it. So that means that the sum, which is the hypotenuse, and the product, which is the height relationship, one is taken to the power of 1/2, and the other is, that's called a geometric mean, and the other is taken and multiplied by 1/2. And then the base is the subtraction differential, and then multiplied by 1/2 as well. That is the proportions of a right triangle. And I believe that foundationally, everything in the universe is based off a right triangle. Nothing is accepted from that. So then I thought, well, if that's true, then let's find out what the proportion should be of the infinite product and the infinite sum, because the sum and product should be embedded within a right triangle. And if it has one right triangle, then we can find some divine right triangle that's going to be like one that God uses, right? Or source creator is using. And so I wanted to see what triangle would be made with this infinite sum and infinite product. And it turns out that that triangle happens to be a 5, 12, 13 triangle, which is straight out of a trivia man. Show you there again. There we go. There you go. So this was something I drew, I think, almost 5 years ago. And I called it the reciprocal value of rest mass energy, 1/time. And you can see the proportion of this triangle is exactly related to this. So you've got the infinite sum, right, divided by 2, which becomes the mean. And then you've got the square, the fourth root of tau, because you have to take it one more root down. Because remember, on the one side, you have to add them together and then multiply by 1/2, which is the infinite sum mean value. And then you have to do the same thing with the square root of tau, where you take it to the fourth root of tau, because that's the multiplication, just like the geometric mean. And then you take that to the power of 1/2. So taking it to the power of 1/2 is taking another square root value. So it was already the square root of tau, which now becomes, for the height value, becomes the fourth root of tau. And what I realized is that it makes a 5, 12, 13 proportion. So this is a 67-degree angle that's giving us a 5, 12, 13 proportion, which is the same as the one on the back of the dollar bill, interestingly enough. And so that actually, yes, the infinite sum and the infinite product do conform to a right triangle with Pythagorean triple characteristics. Wow. Right, so this was, 3, 22, 21 when I drew this out. Okay, so this is when I first started to play with this. I started realizing that the right triangle is the basis of all spirality. It's not actually the golden ratio. Everyone always gets this wrong. If you try to overlay a golden ratio on top of a nautilus shell, it's not going to be anywhere close to the right pitch proportion. And what I realized, I wrote a paper on this called a novel geometric spiral, right? Polygonal spiral that basically defines all galaxy structures as well as all hurricanes. Even got down to the point where I could look at a hurricane, take a photograph of the hurricane, and tell you exactly the speed of the hurricane just based on the pitch of the spirality, within 5 miles per hour accuracy. So, and I can tell you if it's category 4, of course, then a category 5 or whatever category, and it's based on the number of polygonal relationships that are within it. So, a mod 10 would be a pentagonal spiral. A mod 12 would be a hexagonal spiral. A mod 14 would be a heptagonal spiral, which is 7 sides, right? So, And it's basically just as you can see here, the hypotenuse over the height is defining, and I discovered this, defines the logarithmic base value. So if the hypotenuse divided by the height is giving you like 1.018 or whatever it is, right? Then that's going to define the pitch of the spiral. And I was able to match this perfectly with polygons to all galaxies and all hurricanes and Nautilus shells and everything. So this was quite interesting research. But now as an extension of this, I went to the next level. And this is where it does become kind of very important and profound. Because now we can go back and look at this paper. Oh, I'm actually going to do something first. Oh, where'd it go? Okay, there it is. So you might remember, I was talking about this a few weeks ago, that if I took a radius value of 1 and made that 1 meter value, then I was able to unite basically unification of time, light, space, motion, math constants, measurement systems in a single circle with radius 1. So it's like a cipher that the universe uses. Consciousness deliberately created all of this stuff. And so it figured out how to define all of this. So the way this begins is you start with one shape and one circle, radius equals 1, that's all it takes. From this, everything unfolds. The arc at 30 degrees equals the Royal Egyptian cubit. So just 12 separations of this circle's circumference gives you the Royal Egyptian cubit. And 1 radian equals 57.296 degrees, and 1 second, therefore, of scalar breadth. Now, we knew already that e to the I pi plus 1 equals 0 as a wave condition, but when we use a real value, which is what created the architect, of the square root of 10 to the power of -1, then what that gives us is it gives us 1.37, which is related, of course, to the fine structure constant. It's the fine structure constant. So then if you've got a radius of 1 on the circle, you have a diameter of 2, you subtract that value, that 1.37 times 10 to the -1, equals then 1.86282, which is the speed of light. So wait a minute. This one circle with 1 meter as its radius, when I simply take the Euler identity with the real value, which is 1.3703, and I subtract it from the number 2, which is the diameter of the same circle, it's now giving me the speed of light. And that's, by the way, with the emergence of what light is. It's alpha. Alpha is the emergence of light. It's literally the emergence of light. So you can see if we redefine Euler's identity using I to the square root of 10 to the -1, then e to the I pi plus 1 equals 1.3703, which 1 over alpha is not random, but it's encoded. So wait a minute. This means, and then if I take this, if I make a pendulum that swings exactly 1/12 of the circumference of that circle, or 1 Royal Egyptian cubit, that equals exactly 1 second each direction. So that does it 86,400 times in one day. I mean, come on, right? It's like, so we have one circle with radius of 1 meter, which gives us literally a cipher to all of existence, which is unification of time, light, speed, space, motion, the constants, even the Mandelbrot set, because the Mandelbrot set is based on Euler decay and the Feigenbaum constant, which is e to the -pi. Basically just another derivation of, simply another derivation of e to the I pi plus 1. So this gives us all of this. So all measurement systems get united in this one thing. So then I'm thinking, okay, this is wild, right? Because also if I took the 57.296 degree radian value, right? And I multiply that. So 57.296 times 5226. Yeah, so 57.296 times the Royal Egyptian cubit also equals the speed of light. When you use the scalar conversion for the 57.296. See, I have a picture of this somewhere.
Hey, Robert, you're muted.